Now for the rules. There are several parts to this debate tonight. First, we're going to be asking both of the candidates questions. Then each candidate will ask one other a question, followed by individual questions, and finally their closing statements. So we will start with questions actually for both of the candidates. You each will have 1 minute to answer. Then each candidate will be given 30 seconds for their rebuttal. If there is any follow-up from the moderators, a candidate will have an additional 30 seconds to answer that. A timekeeper will let you know when you have 15 seconds left, and a bell will sound when your time is up. Now, in an earlier card draw, it was determined that Senator Dean Heller will be the first to answer. Then we'll be taking turns after that, and Steve Sebelius will start us off.
Senator, Congresswoman, good evening. Thanks for being here. Let's start with a question about health care. For the average middle-class family, the cost of health care is skyrocketing. Senator Heller, you're answering first with a minute to answer. How are you going to fix those costs in the future? And do you think coverage for people with pre-existing conditions should be a part of any health care plan?
Yeah, well, and thank you, Steve, and to the moderators that are here tonight. I want to thank Channel 8, also Channel 2 up in Reno, and Univision for taking time, and all the viewers that are with us this evening. I appreciate that the first question is about health care. If you recall, I sat with and stood shoulder to shoulder with Governor Sandoval a while back, and we talked about what's important in health care. We talked about the very issues that we think are most important. One, pre-existing conditions should be part of any health care bill. Children under the age of 26 should make sure that that they're part of their parents' insurance program. And finally, we have to make sure that expanded Medicaid was protected in the state of Nevada. Those were the three things both the governor and I agreed on. Now, there's things we do disagree on, and I assure you that there are some disagreement, but those were the three things that we agreed on. Making sure the pre-existing condition was part of any health care bill. I went to Washington, D.C., and that's exactly what I did.
Congresswoman Rosen, now it's your turn. Same question. What are you going to do to control the rising costs of health care, and do you think pre-existing conditions should be covered in any health care plan?
Well, I'm so happy you started out with that question, and thank you again for hosting tonight and for Senator for being here. Health care is the most important thing that we can think of. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So the first thing that we can do is really stabilize those cost-sharing reductions. Because when I go around talking to Nevada families, they don't talk to me about politics. They do talk to me about their health, their rising cost of premiums, their prescription drug prices. I've introduced legislation that will cap prescription drug prices at $250 a person or $500 a family. We need to address a medical resident shortage. Growing up doctors here. We have a new medical school here at UNLV, so we need to increase those medical residencies. That's another thing we can do. And we need to be sure, number one, that we protect those pre-existing conditions that Senator Heller and his colleagues want to slash. My phone is ringing off the hook with parents and grandparents. People have chronic disease, serious illness, pre-existing conditions. They're not going to be able to get coverage.
Senator Heller, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Well, first of all, what she's saying isn't true, but if you spend $50 million, and that's how much money she's raising out of California to put these ads on TV that just aren't true. I proposed two pieces of legislation, authored of myself. In fact, I wrote the bill, the repeal and the replacement bill for Republicans that specifically added pre-existing conditions to it, because that's how I feel about it. I have two children, two grandchildren with pre-existing conditions. For you to think for a minute is shameful.
Congresswoman, 30 seconds to rebut.
Senator Heller stood here in Las Vegas on a stage similar to this one with Governor Sandoval, and he promised to protect hundreds of thousands of Nevadans in their health care. And then he went back to Washington and he broke that promise. Watch the tape. He caved to Mitch McConnell and super PACs, and right after he did that, he received millions of dollars in ads to support his campaign. He's beholden to Mitch McConnell, his mega donors, and Donald Trump in Washington. He's not listening or worrying about Nevadans' health. Watch the tape.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Tatiki?
Now, you both have said that you are for a comprehensive immigration reform. However, nobody really knows exactly what that means. Now, this past summer, the Trump administration attempted to slow down the immigration by separating children from their parents. And in fact, right now, the outrage has resulted from hundreds of children still being separated from their parents, and they're right now housed by the government under this cloud of secrecy. Now, the question goes to you, Congresswoman Rosen, first. What do you think should be done with these children that are still being detained by our government at this point?
Well, let's be clear. This policy, this reckless policy, has been put into place by the Trump administration. And Senator Heller, who's been a rubber stamp for Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the President, stands behind these family separations. They're cruel. I did go to the border. I did go see these young children separated from their parents, anxious, afraid, in dusty tents, wondering what's going to happen to them. That's not how we should treat children. I don't want to do that. I've been part of a bipartisan act called the USA Act that actually provides border security and protects dreamers. We also need to fight for our TPS recipients, and we need to stop this reckless family separation at the border. The only way we do that is coming to the table and working on bipartisan immigration reform that does secure our borders with smart border security and does provide a pathway to citizenship for those who want it, and to protect our dreamers and TPS recipients right here in Nevada.
Senator Heller, what do you think should be done with these children being detained at this point by our government as a result?
Well, first of all, I'm the 5th most bipartisan member of the United States Senate. I have worked with Republicans and Democrats to make this happen. In fact, I was one of 14 Republicans that did support 5 years ago the bipartisan immigration reform package that was in front of the United States Senate. Had that bill passed, we wouldn't be here today having the very conversation that we are having. The House of Representatives wouldn't take it up. But the bottom line is this: when it came to separating families, I was the first to write a letter to this administration and tell them I didn't like it when the Obama administration separated families. I didn't like it when the Trump administration separated families. But this is what was in the law. We need to change that law because I think it's wrong. And I have been very, very clear. Now, my opponent went down to the border so that she could have a photo op done so that she could run a commercial and not do her job back in Washington, D.C. But I just think that it's pretty obvious that what she was down there to do was just to get this photo op, to get a commercial, ran the commercial the next week.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman Rosen, you have 30 seconds for the rebuttal.
You know, Senator Heller, just because he says something doesn't mean it's true. I went down there to check on the children. I saw teenage boys in dusty tents, separated from their families, not having any way to contact them, only 2 10-minute phone calls a week, no legal representation, frightened out of their minds. That's why I went to the border. I was doing my job, and I'm proud to be part of the bipartisan acts that are going to move this country forward. And I'm telling you, Senator Heller, when a bipartisan group of senators wanted to meet to talk about the Dreamers, he said he didn't have time.
You have 30 seconds for the rebuttal, Senator Heller.
But let's put it this way. We were back in Washington, D.C., trying to fix Agent Orange for our veterans, and she thought it was more important to get a photo op done at the border.
I was a co-sponsor
that
of
is what
bill.
with Nancy Pelosi.
Let's 382
do you get a chance to talk, or do I get to finish my comments? She went down to get a photo op and threw the veterans off the bus. I think that's wrong. I think it's horrendous. That we should be taking care of our veterans here in this country instead of just having photo ops done at the border.
Thank you both. Denise.
All right, you both have brought up bipartisanship in this early part of the debate. Some people blame President Trump for the escalated frustration when it comes to politics. The country really seems to be becoming more divided, tribal, partisan. Now, both of you are touting yourselves as bipartisan. In fact, here are 2 examples from your recent campaign ads.
He crossed party lines to pass the Violence Against Women Act. He's the 5th most bipartisan member of the Senate.
Jackie works with both parties. In her first term, Jacky Rosen joined the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, wrote bipartisan legislation President Trump signed to improve veterans' health care.
So, Senator Heller, you'll be answering first. Will you make working across the aisle a real priority and name one specific thing that you could do to de-escalate this partisan standoff?
Well, there's a lot of things we can do, and everybody's at fault, but I am the 5th. As the governor said in that picture, I'm the 5th most bipartisan member of the United States Senate. It doesn't matter to me whether it's a Republican or Democrat. I'll get together, I'll work with them, and we'll solve problems, whether it's health care problems, immigration problems, veterans problems. We have worked together, both sides, to try to get this solved. I think everybody should be treated with respect. And I don't, regardless of what party you're in, what your gender may be, what your social class, it doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. are the key is for people in the United States Senate to treat each other with respect, and I'll continue to do that. I do believe that there's a lot of problems, a lot of burden to share. You saw the Kavanaugh hearings. You saw how bad that got. I think that both sides have something to blame with this, but I also think the media has something to blame with in this also. We see how they treat Trump supporters. We see how they treat Kanye West when he goes into the White House. I mean, all of this leads to some real grinding and headbutting in Congress.
Okay, Congresswoman Rosen, will you be making a commitment to work across the aisle? And also name one specific thing, and I'll get back to you with that, Senator, but something specific you could do to de-escalate the partisan standoff.
Well, I can tell you that I'm proud to be actually the 5th most bipartisan freshman in the House. I'm proud to have received one of 13 Democrats out of both houses to receive the 2018 U.S. Chamber of Commerce Spirit of Enterprise Award because of my bipartisan work. And I'm original member, a founder of what we call the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House. It's a group of about 50 of us so far, equal amounts of Democrats and Republicans, who come to the table and try to find smart solutions to the everyday problems that we have, things that we all get along on. So what I want to do is continue to work in my Problem Solvers way with our Problem Solvers Caucus, take that to the Senate and try to find those smart solutions. What we've done, I've worked across the aisle on many bills. I've actually passed helped to pass 50 pieces of legislation through the House, some of which have been signed by the President, like the Forever GI Bill, that allows our veterans to use their benefits throughout their life. I've been proud to be on other bills like the SHIELD Act that pay our men and women in uniform. Sorry, we got the
Senator Heller, your 30 seconds for your rebuttal.
First of all, let's make sure that you understand my opponent has voted with Nancy Pelosi 90% of the time. So this bipartisanship that she talks about, problem solving, we can move on to exactly what I'm doing in the United States Senate. And I am working with Republicans and Democrats. I'm looking for solutions. Every day looking for solutions. I have Democrats coming into my office, sitting down with me, and saying, okay, how do we solve this particular problem? Throwing ideas to me, and I'll let them know if it's good or bad, and they know if I'm with them. That it's a bipartisan solution. So I'll continue to do that in the United States Senate, and that's why I'm the 5th most bipartisan member of the United States Senate.
Congressman Rosen, your final 30 seconds here.
You know, if Senator Heller was so bipartisan, he wouldn't receive a D from the Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans. He wouldn't receive an F from the National Association of Educators. He wouldn't receive an F from the NAACP, and he sure wouldn't receive a 0 from League of Conservation Voters. He's rubber-stamped every one of Trump's nomination without even giving it a second thought. Nevadans want an independent voice. They want someone who's going to listen to them, take their stories, fight for them, and stand up when it's right and get along when they can. That's what I've been doing since I've been in the House. I'm going to do that in the Senate.
Steve.
As you both know, earmarks are direct appropriations for projects within a congressman's or a senator's home state or district that are added to spending bills. Congress banned earmarks in February of 2011 under the theory that they cause spending to increase. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different with this question. We're going to ask you to raise your hand, and we'll give you a chance to explain afterwards. Raise your hand if you are in favor of keeping the ban on earmarks in place. Okay, you both raised your hand. You both want to keep that ban on earmarks in place. Now, political figures across the aisle, from former Senator Harry Reid all the way to President Trump, say that perhaps getting rid of the ban on earmarks might cause more cooperation as members work together. And it's also very useful in getting projects like I-11 or funding for higher education. So, Congresswoman Rosen, tell us why you want to keep that earmark ban in place, notwithstanding the potential benefits.
Well, what I want to tell you, I'm really glad you asked me that question, because I happen to be on a bipartisan bill with Walter Jones, and it's called the Pulled Pork Act. So we don't, yeah, it's a pretty good name for the bill, isn't it? We want to be sure we stop earmarks, because what happens is if someone becomes a favorite or someone becomes not so favorite, then you don't get anything for your district or your state. That's not the way we should be operating. Our government should be passing budgets and making decisions that are smart and that work for everyone. So I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of the Pulled Pork Act with Walter Jones. I'm going to continue to work in that way, that we make smart decisions for our country going forward. Of course, trying to bring everything we can for the state, but we need to think of it in a bigger picture all the way around.
Senator Heller, same question. The potential benefits. Senator Reid said that he didn't want bureaucrats making a decision as to where the money should go.
Sure.
It should be a lawmaker. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, and I haven't supported earmarks since I've been in Washington, D.C., but I do find it interesting you'd bring up I-11 because they did have an opening for that in her congressional district, and she didn't show up for it. Show up for probably the biggest infrastructure project that we've had in this state in decades. In her district, she didn't show up for it. Why didn't she show up for it? Because she was in California raising money. This is the problem that we have here in Washington, D.C. We need to strengthen the economy. We don't need more earmarks. We need a stronger economy. And look what this administration and what we have done over the last 20 months. We have grown the economy from less than 2% to over 4.2%. We can thank this administration for taking a tax bill that she voted against. I voted for this strong economy. She voted against it. She voted against this economy that we have today that's not creating jobs, it's creating better jobs. Not just better jobs, but it's creating careers. That's what we're doing here in the state of Nevada. And if you're creating careers, you don't need earmarks.
Congresswoman Rosen, 30 seconds to rebut.
You know, I want to say what Senator Heller's been working on. He talked about the tax bill. That tax bill added $1.8 trillion to the debt. And they're signaling now, Mitch McConnell, his friend Mitch McConnell, that they want to balance our budget on the backs of senior citizens through deep cuts through Social Security and Medicare. And I want to tell you, I'm the only person on this stage that actually voted to make middle-class tax cuts permanent. Senator Heller hasn't. He only voted for a massive giveaway to large corporations.
Senator Heller, for your follow-up, I'd like to ask you, you said you've never supported earmarks since you've been in Washington, D.C.
I'm sorry, and I was mistaken on that. When I was first in Congress, yes, we did have earmarks, I think, for the first couple of sessions. After that, we were banned, and I've supported the ban since. I apologize for making that error.
And so you co-sponsored in 2010 21 earmarks that totaled more than $42 million.
Sure.
Was that not a good idea then?
Well, in other words, we were taking dollars and competing here in the state of Nevada. If I were ever to modify the earmark situation, I'd make it only for public works projects, like the I-11 project that she refused to show up for when they had the opening for it, because she was in California raising money. But all these projects that we have, if they were public projects, schools, highways, infrastructure, technology, those issues, I'd consider looking at it that way. But for any private earmark, that's where everybody got in trouble. That's what I'm opposed to.
Okay, thank you both. Tatiki?
Well, we're going to go back to the same subject that we were discussing right now, and that's something that you certainly do not agree on, and these are the Trump tax cuts. Now, one of the criticisms for the Trump tax cuts was that the cuts were for the middle class, given a date of expiration, as we were speaking with Congresswoman Rosen. However, the cuts for the corporations were permanent. Now, Las Vegas Sands estimated their benefit from the tax cuts at nearly $1.2 billion. A Gallup poll from September, 64% of Americans say they have not seen an increase in their take-home pay as a result of the lower federal income taxes. The question goes for you, Senator Heller, first. Would you make the middle class tax cuts permanent, and what would you do to fix that plan?
Of course I would. Of course I would. In fact, I wrote the original plan, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Let me assure you, there is a reason why the Chamber of Commerce's all across the state of Nevada and unions, both public and private, are endorsing my campaign. There's a reason that they're doing this, because we're creating jobs. Look at the stadium here downtown. Take a look at the expansion of the
downtown, Senator?
And take a look. So it's on the Strip. Yeah, let's make sure we highlight that. But we're also expanding the convention center. We also have all this growth on the Strip. It's all because of the changes that we've made in this tax structure. So for an individual, for that poll, and I don't know who ran that poll, and you probably mentioned it, they obviously weren't polling people here in the state of Nevada. Everybody here in the state of Nevada has more money in their wallet today. Their paychecks are higher, they have more money in their pocket, and their pensions are higher, all because of the bill that I authored, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
Congresswoman Rosen, you already stated your position regarding the middle-class tax cuts. Now, what would you do then to the corporate tax cuts, or how would you fix the tax reform?
Well, what we need to do is make this tax plan simpler and fairer. Corporations need to pay their fair share. Do you know that Senator Heller, he bragged about writing a tax plan? In that tax plan is a full deduction for a corporate jet. I don't know too many regular people who own a corporate jet. Maybe we could find some savings in that line right there, Senator. So what we need to do is be sure that we close those loopholes for hedge fund managers. the brakes for big oil and big pharma, the major donors to Senator Heller's campaign. And what the tax plan that I voted for, that I broke with my party from, gave middle class a permanent tax cut. So let's be clear, I kept my promise to middle class families here in Nevada, where Senator Heller's worried about corporate jet owners.
Senator Heller, you have 30 seconds for the rebuttal.
That is rich in irony. Here's a person that would reverse the tax cuts, called it crumbs, did a press conference.
Never did.
She did a press conference saying she was opposed. It's on tape. She opposed to these tax cuts. She would take us back to the Obama era of 2% growth, of 60% of the homes being underwater. We can go down the list of how high our unemployment was. I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forward. And this tax plan is working for Nevada, and Nevada is working.
Congresswoman, will you vote to repeal the tax cuts?
Now, what I want to do is make sure that this tax plan is simpler and fairer. I voted for a plan that makes middle-class tax cuts permanent, and I want to revisit the plan so that corporations pay their fair share. This tax plan that he wrote added $1.8 trillion to the debt. They're going to balance that on the backs of our senior citizens with cuts to Social Security and Medicare. And we've shown that corporations aren't reinvesting in our community or putting money back into wages. Wages are flat, and they're spending over $1 trillion buying back their own stock.
Thank you both. Steve.
The Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act, we call it SNPLMA, although I won't make you say that, provides money for trails and restoration projects in Nevada through the sale of federally owned lands here in the state. Now, according to the Office of Management and Budget, the Department of the Interior has received over $3.4 billion from land sales under the authority of the Act, and the proceeds have funded over 1,200 projects with notable investments across Southern Nevada and in Lakes Tahoe and Lake Mead. But President Trump has advanced a proposal that would have taken $230 million from that account. So, Congresswoman Rosen, you're first on this question with a minute to answer. How will you keep the president from taking money out of that account?
I want to know.
Well, what we need to do is we need to put a check and balance on this president, something that you're not willing to do, Senator. You were 99% against President Trump. Now you're 110%
Please answer
for
his
him.
question.
So what we need to do is keep our public lands in public hands. I want to tell you that our outdoor tourism industry is so vibrant. It's nearly 150,000 jobs and adds millions of dollars in tax revenue throughout the state, from Lake Tahoe all the way down to Lake Mead, Hoover Dam, and Laughlin, to our tallest peaks and lowest valleys here in Las Vegas. And so we need to be sure that we fight President Trump and this administration in every way we can to protect our public lands so that we control them here in Nevada. They are secure, they are sacred, and they mean an awful lot to us.
Senator Heller, same question for you. How will you prevent President Trump from taking money out of that account? First of all,
I still want her to answer the question, because we're talking about SNPLA and SNPLA funds and the lands deals that we have here in the state. I'm working on 4 right now. 4 lands deals for Washoe, for Clark, for Douglas, and for Lovelock, Pershing County. I want to know how many you're working on, because what we're trying to do is expand the footprints of these cities so that we can expand housing and make it easier for us to lower the cost of housing here in the state of Nevada. I think this is critical. And yes, he did want to take that dollar away. Guess who stopped it? Guess who stopped him from taking those dollars away from the state of Nevada so that we can use it in Lake Mead, so we can use those dollars at Lake Tahoe and help keep them greener, the water bluer, the sky bluer, so on and so forth. That's the purpose of these SNPLMA funds, is to make sure that we can take these federal lands. We know the federal government owns 87% of the land. I want to know which lands bill you're working on. Tell us which lands bill, because that's Steve's question.
Well, actually, my question was, how are you going to, you said we should fight President Trump, and this is 30 seconds for your rebuttal. How would you do that? How would you keep him from taking the money out of that fund?
Well, if we have a Democratic Senate, hopefully we're going to be able to stand up to him, and if we have a Democratic House, because what happens in Nevada is really important, and we shouldn't let Nevada money go into President Trump's hands where he can spend it wherever he wants. I want to tell you that we need to protect our lands right here. We do have public lands. We're working with the wilderness programs, the checkerboard lands up in northern Nevada, and SNPLMA is very important. We need to take care of our public lands here in southern Nevada.
Thank you, Congressman. Senator Heller, in your rebuttal, can you tell us how you stopped the president?
Absolutely. I go and talk to him. Something that she can't do. I go and talk to this president and got that money back. It's the same way that I'm able to stop Yucca Mountain. Yucca Mountain was stopped twice in the United States Senate because of me. Do you know it was her committee that the money was put into? She didn't offer a single amendment.
You voted for that
she didn't
last
offer
year,
a
Senator.
single amendment. She didn't offer a single amendment in her committee to take that money away. And I had to stop it in the United States Senate. If my opponent is elected to the United States Senate, we will have Yucca Mountain by the end of the year.
All right, thank you both. Denise.
Just as a reminder, you each do get a full minute and your 30-second rebuttal. So for our next question tonight, veterans have certainly become a major topic during this election. Can each of you name the most important bill for veterans that still needs to pass in the next session of the Congress? And also talk about how you would make sure that it does pass. Senator Heller, you can answer this one first.
Yeah, first of all, I sit on the committee. I sit on the Veterans Committee. I've passed over 40 pieces of legislation for veterans here in the state of Nevada. When I got to the United States Senate, we had the worst regional office in the country here in the state of Nevada. It took 3, 4, 5 years if you were transitioning from full-time military to become a veteran. I sat down with Bob Casey, a Democrat from Pennsylvania. He had the second worst in the country. And together we looked at the red tape that was making it so difficult. I even had to fire the director of the regional office here in Nevada in order to improve things. You know what the results are? It takes less now than 120 days to get that paperwork through this regional office. And you know what it means? You know what it means? 500,000 veterans today have health care and benefits that they otherwise would not have had. That is a true success story for our veterans here in Nevada.
Congressman Rosen, your turn. Name the most important veteran bill that still needs to pass, and how would you make sure it does get passed?
Well, we need to be sure that we're doing something to end veterans' homelessness and end veteran suicide. So there's a number of bills out there that are sitting out there waiting to be passed. This is a bipartisan issue. I sit on the Military Personnel Committee of Armed Services. We talk about these things every day as every active duty military person and their families will transition into being a veteran. We talk about how we improve their care at the VA when they're out. We talk about how we transition them. I've just recently dropped a bill on the Transition and Assistance Program to make it more robust, to be sure that we start about a year ahead of time before an active duty military is transitioning into being a veteran with the process of what they're going to do when they get out, how they get their benefits, and how the TAP program is going to follow them throughout their lives to be sure that they get their benefits. And I want to tell you, I'm really proud that we did pass the Forever GI Bill that allows them to use their student benefits throughout their life. I'm proud to have been on the Higher Student Vets Act that also allows veterans to get paid internships while they're going to school.
Senator, in your 30-second rebuttal, you talked about some of the accomplishments, but what's next? What's the next thing that needs to happen for veterans?
We're going to continue. Like I said, I passed 40 pieces of legislation. Let me tell you what the best thing that ever happens to me as a United States Senator is when I listen to one veteran talk to another veteran. And what that veteran says is, if you want help from our delegation, come call Heller's office. VA just put out a list of offices that do the most to help veterans here in the state of Nevada. And that chart has me doing more work for more veterans than the rest of our delegation combined by five. Why aren't you helping our veterans?
I'm so glad that he asked me that question because I've made veterans a priority in my office. You know, I'm a daughter and granddaughter of a World War II veteran, and my office has found $700,000 in benefits for veterans that we've returned to them in my district just this last year. I couldn't be prouder of the work that my staff is doing for veterans all across the valley. I'm going to continue that work and expand on it every single day. And if you're a veteran listening tonight, you can be sure that I'm going to honor and value your service every single day.
Steve?
Let's talk about guns for a second. Nevadans expressed their support for universal background checks in 2016 with the passage of Question 1. Now, as you know, that measure has been stalled because of flaws in how it was written. And so far, no federal court has found that background checks are unconstitutional. So, Congresswoman Rosen, this question is to you first with a minute to reply. Would you support a federal law to require that every gun sale, including those between private parties, is subject to a background check? And if not, what gun legislation would you support?
I think we need to fix NICS. I absolutely believe that we have to be sure that all commercial gun sales have valid research and have licensure. Going forward from there, we need to be sure that we ban bump stocks, like the kinds that were used on the 1 October shooting. We never want to have to go through that again. We need to be sure that we limit the capacity of magazines. That isn't going to take anyone's gun away, and we know in some of the most drastic shootings, that's when they were able to apprehend a killer. So what I want to say is this, is that Nevada has a rich heritage and history of gun ownership, and we need to protect and preserve that. And we can do that with common sense measures without taking anyone's guns away. I want to preserve and protect the Second Amendment, but I want common sense gun safety. There are a few things we can do right away to do that.
Senator Heller, same question to you with the same minute to answer. Do you think there should be a federal law that requires all gun sales, including those between private parties, to
First of all, this question couldn't put two candidates further apart from each other. I do support the Second Amendment.
I do too.
And I will not do anything that will take guns away from law-abiding citizens. What I do want to do is make sure that those who are incapacitated or have mental problems, I want to limit their access to that. She talks about the fixed NICS. I wrote that law. We passed fixed NICS, and she needs to know we passed fixed NICS. And what it did was expanded background checks, told the states, bring your records in, your mental health records, and your felonies, and let's make sure that it is in this fixed NICS system. So what law have you passed to everything that you're saying? What have you passed in
Senator,
one piece of legislation?
That's your time. That's your time. Let me ask the question here. Congresswoman Rosen, I couldn't help but notice in your answer, you didn't directly answer the question. Do you think that all gun sales, including those between private parties, should have a background check?
Yes, I do. And I believe that going forward, we need to be sure that we consider gun ownership for private parties. It's important that we preserve and protect the Second Amendment, but that we also preserve and protect public health and safety. Everyone that I talk to going around this state tells me that all the time. They understand the difference. We have nearly 50 million tourists across the state of Nevada. So we really understand that there's two separate things that we need to do, and one doesn't have anything to do with the other. So I want to protect public health and safety, and Senator Heller is guilty of taking all of his money from the gun lobby.
Senator Heller, consistent with your support for the Second Amendment, do you think all private party sales should undergo a background check?
No, I do not. I do not. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I will not restrict law-abiding citizens here in this country. I will do expanded background checks, and that's what the fixed NICS system is all about. I do not want... My opponent was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I do not want Chicago laws in Nevada.
Please, Congressman.
I don't want Chicago laws here in the state of Nevada. And that's all we're going to get if she goes to the United States. She wants Las Vegas to be just like Chicago. And we know how that's turned out.
Oh, my.
All right, thank you both. Tatiki.
Now, in July of this year, the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator, put out a report saying that Russia attempted to interfere in our last election. What do you think is the appropriate response that America should take towards Russia?
Well, first of all, it's true. I mean, I'm not arguing that. First of all, it's true that, yes, we have had Russia involved in our elections here in this country, and my biggest concern is we're going to get China involved in our elections here. I'm worried right now that we have a monitor here in the state of Nevada that's going to be here on November 6th from Russia. Russia has sent someone over here to monitor our elections, and by the way, we send people over to Russia to monitor their elections, but the last thing I want in this world of today, with the problems that we have with Russia, someone in here monitoring our elections here in this country, and especially in the state of Nevada. But having said all that, it's true. There's no doubt. In fact, I think they came out with the first indictment today with individuals that they have caught that were monitoring and that were involved in our elections. We need to stop that. Former Secretary of State, I put the rules in place for the state of Nevada to keep our elections clean. To keep them clean. Now, it's been a while since I've been Secretary of State, and I'd love to go back and make sure that that's what's going on here in the state of Nevada.
Congresswoman Rosen, your turn. What do you think is the appropriate response that America should take towards Russia in this situation?
Let's be clear. Russia is not our friend. Russia is not our ally. And when Senator Heller is a rubber stamp for President Trump and his best friend, Vladimir Putin, it's something to be worried about. We need to be sure that our elections, that they're free, they're fair, they're open, that there's no voter suppression. Senator Heller and I do agree on that. We do agree that Russians are here, that they're meddling in our elections, possibly China and possibly others. So we need to be sure that we check our machines. We've put forward hundreds of millions of dollars to start validating all of our machines across the country, making sure that we have the proper election security so that whenever you vote, whoever you vote for, your vote counts and your vote matters and your vote isn't manipulated by some foreign country.
Yeah.
You have 30 seconds, Senator Heller.
I don't want you to think for a minute that I don't trust the Secretary of State we have here in Nevada today. I think she does a great job. But I do want to point out that when I was Secretary of State, I put the voting system in the state of Nevada. Not only did I put the voting machines in there, and they were electronic, but it was the first state that had a paper record that was attached to it. So you had two separate counts, and if you needed a recount, you could always go to the paper record. That's what the state of Nevada needs, is to make sure that we have a redundant system and a paper system and a paper trail so that we don't have the problems with our elections that we're seeing around the country.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman, 30 seconds.
Yes,
for
I
everybody.
do agree with Senator Heller on this. Every single system across the state of Nevada and across this country needs to be safe and secure. And we'll talk about Secretary of State for a minute, because we do need to be sure that our Secretary of State and the Secretaries of States across this country don't engage in voter suppression, that they don't go to our tribal lands and try to limit voting in certain areas of our tribal lands, on our low-income neighborhoods. We need to be sure that our vote is free and open and not suppressed.
Thank you both. Denise.
Senator Heller, you voted to confirm Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
I did.
Congresswoman Rosen, you vocally opposed that confirmation. Given the controversy surrounding those hearings, what kind of changes would you recommend in the way we vet and the way we confirm a nominee moving forward? And Congresswoman, you can answer this one first.
Thank you. You know, Senator Heller refused to meet with Merrick Garland when President Obama nominated him. He stopped that for an entire year. But then he met with Judge Kavanaugh right away and said he had absolutely no reservations, even when there were allegations of sexual misconduct. He said, we'll be off to the races. This is just a hiccup. He even went so far to make a bet. He bet $100 that Judge Kavanaugh would be confirmed quickly without any interference. So what we need to do is, in the Senate, I won't just approve a justice because they're nominated by a Democratic president, or disapprove of one because they're nominated by a Republican president. The Senate's job is to do advice and consent, to actually look at the research, examine someone's judicial temperament and their record, and be sure that they're fit during this job interview to do the job that we're asking them to do, a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the land.
Senator Heller, what kind of changes would you recommend in the way we vet and confirm a future nominee?
Well, there's been no more vetted candidate than Judge Kavanaugh was. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a grandfather, and had anything happened to Dr. Ford happen to any of my children, I would have asked them to do the exact same thing Dr. Ford did. Kavanaugh, I support Kavanaugh. I support Kavanaugh to this day, and I think he's going to be a tremendous Supreme Court justice. He had 7 background checks, 6 leading up to the second highest court, and then, of course, he had, 5 up to the highest court, 1 when he was nominated, but also the 7th when Dr. Ford came out. I went in that room and read every single one of those witnesses and all that evidence to see if the rule of law was going to be upheld. You can be for #MeToo. You can be for the Me Too movement, and you can be for the rule of law at the same time. And that's exactly what happened in this case. And that's why Justice Kavanaugh is on the Supreme Court today.
So, Congresswoman, in your 30-second rebuttal, are you comfortable with the current vetting process?
No, I'm not. What I really want to have is free and open vetting. The Republican Senate had thousands and thousands of pages of documents, and they didn't really ask the proper questions. They didn't let the investigation go forward because they knew that if they did, people might have more concerns, and they just wanted what they wanted. Senator Heller didn't show any empathy when he called Dr. Ford's testimony a hiccup, her allegations a hiccup. And this isn't a partisan issue. Men and women, Republicans and Democrats, have stood up and spoke out even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Senator Heller, your 30 seconds.
Let me address the hiccup,
here.
because she's just making this up, which she does and has done throughout this campaign. I was talking about the process. I was talking about Dr. Ford being a victim twice. Once, obviously, when she was in high school, but second, through this process and the way she was treated by the Democratic Party. What Feinstein did to her was atrocious, and I was talking about the process. Maybe I was being a little bit too nice calling it a hiccup, but she was victimized twice by the Democratic Party throughout this process.
Thank you both. Steve?
Last week, the United Nations released a report warning of significant worsening of droughts, floods, extreme heat, and poverty for millions of people due to climate change. Now, according to the report, a half-degree difference in temperature could prevent coral reefs from being destroyed, reduce hurricane strength, and ease pressure on the warming Arctic. So, Senator Heller, you're first on this one.
Yeah.
You've said the impact of human activity on climate change is up for debate, but since every little bit helps, what policies would you support to minimize man-made climate change?
First of all, I say I'm not a denier of global warming. I'm not a denier of that. The science is we're continuing to look at the science to see how much man has been involved in this. But the bill that she wants to repeal, the jobs cut, the tax cut and the Jobs Act, she wants to repeal it. She did a press conference telling everybody she wants to repeal it, but she can deny it now. Put in place investment tax credits for the solar industry, for the wind energy. In fact, I'm the author of both of those provisions. I'm the author of the provision for investment tax credits for geothermal, so that they have the same benefits that the other alternative energy sector has. I believe we can go to alternative energy. I think we can get away from gas and oil. And the legislation that I have put in place, the bill that she wants to repeal would help clean up this economy and get us into a more sustainable energy power here in the state of Nevada and across this country. Nevada can lead. Nevada can lead if she doesn't repeal that bill.
Congresswoman Rosen, now, what policies do you think the United States should implement to protect the planet?
Well, I can tell you that since I've been in the House of Representatives from day one, they've been rolling back regulations that protect our energy and protect our environment. Just this last week, I saw a picture of Lake Mead. I moved here permanently in 1980. My family moved here in 1976. But in the early 80s, Lake Mead was flowing over Hoover Dam, over the top. Today, you see it all the way to the bottom. So climate change is real, and here at the Desert Research Institute, they're working on cutting-edge technology in solar, wind, water, and geothermal. I sit on space science and technology on the energy subcommittees, and we have to continue to fund research and fund investment in this area so we can keep our clean water and our clean air a sustainable future for our children and our grandchildren going forward.
All right, thank you. Senator Heller, 30 seconds to rebut.
Yeah, I just want to remind her on day one she voted for Pelosi to be Speaker of the United States Congress, and I want to remind her what she said 2 years ago. What she said 2 years ago, the first thing she'd do when she stepped onto the floor of the House of Representatives is that she would introduce a piece of legislation to raise the minimum wage to $15. She didn't do it. She also said that she would make college more affordable, and she'd author that legislation. She didn't do it. So don't talk about stepping on the floor of the House of Representatives and making promises like you promised you wouldn't shut down the government. Said she wouldn't shut down the government, and the first year she did that.
Congresswoman Rosen, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Well, I would rebut that because the tax plan that Senator Heller wrote gives giant tax breaks to big oil and to energy companies. Just look who his investors are. Look who his donors are. It's all large corporations, Wall Street, and big hedge funds. So we need to do something to take away the to put the responsibility back in the hands of Nevadans, back in the hands of responsible people, to be sure we have clean air, clean water, a sustainable future, and not have a senator who's in the pocket of big oil.
All right, thank you both. Denise?
We've already done a little bit of this, but in this next part of the debate, you're going to ask each other a question directly. You will have 1 minute to respond to that question. Then the person who asked the question will have 30 seconds for their rebuttal. So, Senator Heller, this is your opportunity tonight to ask the Congresswoman a question directly.
Okay. 90% of her money has come from out of state. She's raised tens of millions of dollars. And here's my question. In the opening of the I-11, we mentioned this earlier, the whole delegation was there except you, because you were fundraising in California. We went to the Veterans Home, they had a celebration, our whole delegation was there except you, because you were in California raising money. Then the Asian Chamber of Commerce, you said you were going to go to the Asian Chamber of Commerce, you didn't go. The rest of the delegation did, because you were raising money in California. Then we had the moving wall, the Vietnam Veterans moving wall. The whole delegation was there, except her, because she was raising money in California. Was it worth it?
What I want to tell you is this, that some of my friends' parents lived at the Boulder City Veterans Home. My parents
Why weren't you there? Why weren't you there?
My parents are buried in the Boulder City Cemetery. And I want to tell you that I have been busy going all around this state doing my job.
California.
And I am proud of the job that I've been doing in Nevada, because as I go around from Winnemucca, you know, I was at a senior center up there, and community center, I talked to a woman, a young mother. Her husband died of opioids. I met a 93-year-old woman. She was a Marine in World War II in Dayton. I was busy working up there. She told me she was proud to be in the Marines, and she's voted in every single election. She's 90-some years old, and she's going to vote for me. I've been to Laughlin and Boulder City and coffee shops in Lovelock. I've been all around the state doing my job, and I have a grassroots campaign, and I am proud of it. I have nearly 400,000 individual contributions to my campaign, because people realize that Nevada is important, and I'm the person that should lead Nevada in the United States Senate.
Senator, you've got 30 seconds here.
Yeah, that grassroots campaign is in California, New York, and Massachusetts. It's not here in the state of Nevada. She raises 90% of her money outside this state. In fact, she just announced today another $5 million you raised in California. Again, I asked you the question, was it worth it?
So you're giving up your rebuttal time? Then?
That's it.
Okay. Congressman Rosen, would you like to ask the senator now a question? You have the floor.
I sure would. So, Senator Heller, I actually don't have a question about your fundraising, even though there's no enthusiasm there. But what I would like to ask you is this. I actually have a question from a family in Reno. There's a woman there. Her name's Teresa Bohannon. She has a son. His name happens to be Dean. He was born with a congenital heart defect. He's going to have a pre-existing condition his whole life. He's going to need surgeries and care. And you met them last year, and you looked them in the eye, and you promised them that you would protect their health care, and that you would protect their protections from pre-existing conditions. And then you went back to Washington, and you broke your promise. You caved. So I want to tell you, look in the camera. They're watching tonight, and what they want me to ask you is this, is to look them in the eye and to tell them the truth, really tell them the truth about why you broke your promise and why you support slashing protections for pre-existing conditions, why you want to hurt their son, Dean.
Yeah. First of all, Dean knows I have his back. Dean knows I have his back. Governor will tell you, and the governor will tell you what you said is false. You can say it 10 times, you can say it 100 times, you can say it 1,000 times. It's just not true. I wrote the replacement bill for the Republican Party. I know exactly what's in that bill, and what's in that bill includes pre-existing conditions.
Please tell them
so
the truth. Look them in the eye and tell them the truth, Senator.
Can we answer the question?
Respond, yes.
Yeah. Also, regardless of what happens in the Texas case, and it's up for debate, I have signed legislation, authored legislation, which she rarely does, that would ensure that regardless of what happens in that case in Texas, pre-existing conditions do exist. I have 2 grandchildren with pre-existing conditions. I think it's ridiculous, Congresswoman, that you think that I wouldn't be there for the health and safety of my own grandchildren.
Congresswoman, you have 30 seconds.
I can tell you that I led a resolution in the House to join on to that Texas lawsuit to be sure that we protect the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act and of pre-existing conditions. And if Senator Heller and his Republican colleagues get their way, then they are going to take those away from you. Those junk plans are just a sham. He knows it. Everyone else knows it. And if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And every single one of us, Senator Heller, is one diagnosis away from a pre-existing condition. And we need to protect our health.
All right, thank you. Tatiki?
Now, before we move on to the individual questions, we have one more question for the both of you. And this one is a little bit more personal. So we want to give voters a chance to get to know the persona behind the political aspect. You will have 1 minute to answer this question. So, Congresswoman, you can go first. You both are parents. What is your proudest moment as a parent?
My proudest moment as a parent, actually, there's so many. My daughter's 22. She just graduated college. I think of all the different things she's done throughout her life. But today she sent me a text message. She's not here in Las Vegas. She sent me a text message before I came. And what she said to me is, "I'm proud of you, Mom. I'm proud of what you're doing. You're going to do great. You're my best friend. And I love you so very much. Go out there and kill it." And so that's what my 22-year-old daughter told me. It made me cry. I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud to be her best friend. And she is an amazing young woman, and I can't wait to see what she grows up to be.
Senator Heller, what is your proudest moment as a parent?
Yeah, my wife and I have been married for 33 years, and we have 4 children. We have 3 grandchildren. And I am proud of all my children for the human beings that they have grown to be, and I'm sure my opponent feels the exact same way.
Absolutely.
And I think that's great. But let me tell you what my proudest my oldest daughter, 6 months ago, she went over to China, and she adopted a 2-year-old little Chinese girl and brought her to the United States. And to see that little girl with her brother and sister and living here in the United States. Now, she does have pre-existing conditions, and I want you to know that I protect those pre-existing conditions for that little Chinese girl. For you to say anything different is wrong. But that little girl is wonderful. She's part of our family now, and she's part of our greater family. And to know that her future is bright now. Imagine what her future was in China in an orphanage, and now she's in the United States. I want every child and every grandchild to feel just like this little 2-year-old Ava, knowing that all their hopes and dreams come true, because that's the way our country is, and that's what our country stands for.
Thank you both.
Yes.
All right, so in this next portion of the debate, we're going to be asking questions of the candidates individually. So each candidate will have 1 minute to answer that question. The panelists may ask a 30-second follow-up question at their discretion, but there will not be a response from the other candidate. And Steve will start us off.
Congresswoman Rosen, the first individual question is for you. A video was taken of you speaking to a Jewish group up in Seattle where you were talking about the 1 October shooting. This is what you said.
On October 1st, when we had that massacre, I went to those hospital rooms and those funerals. None of the other politicians said, "What do we do?" I said, "I'm just channeling my inner Rabbi. I think, what would Rabbi Axelrod say?" So they put me in front. I just did that, and it was so, because I knew I'd been there.
Now, we went back and reviewed our video from the first few days after that shooting, and very rarely did we see you out front. So how can you say that other politicians put you, quote, out front, unquote, given that the public faces were people like Sheriff Joe Lombardo, Governor Brian Sandoval, and Clark County Commissioner Steve Sisolak?
I'm really glad you gave me a chance to clear that up. If you would have really played the whole tape and seen that, what I meant to say is that there's no guidebook. And so I am so proud of our first responders, our sheriff, our police officers, our firemen, ambulance drivers, everyone who helped, our hospitals. And so what I meant to say is there really is no guidebook. This was the largest tragedy, mass shooting tragedy, that has ever been seen in the United States. And so I thought, what would I do? I thought about Rabbi Axelrod, I thought about my faith, and how I would go out front. What I meant by saying out front is that I'm a first-term congresswoman. I'm proud of that. I haven't been a career politician like Senator Heller. And so I thought about what I would do. I meant out front in my public position as a congresswoman, when you have to go out in front and comfort people at the very worst times of their life, in a very public way, when you go to a reunification center, when you go to a hospital room. So I thought about the people I respect most, my clergy, and I did what I thought would be the most comforting.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Tatiki?
Senator Heller, on October 20th of 2016, the Reno Gazette Journal quoted you as saying that you were 100% against Clinton, 99% against Trump. Now, the president uses the same language and has the same position now as he did then. Can you explain why you're now fully embracing the president, given your previous position?
Yeah. I'd be happy to tell you why the president and I now get along. And it's true. We fought like, ask the president, we fought like cats and dogs. What happened was success. What happened was success. He became president of the United States. We started working together. And it built trust. When you have success, it builds trust. When you build trust, it builds friendships. We have President Trump coming to Elko tomorrow, and he's going to spend some time out there, and I'm going to spend some time with him, because we have developed this friendship based on trust. Yeah, we had our differences, and we'll continue to have our differences. I'll be the first to tell you I don't agree with everything he says, but I do agree with most of what he does. He has been incredible in this economy. He's done a great job. He's been great with our veterans. He's been great with our military. He is doing a bang-up job on trade. This is what's leading this country forward. This guy is moving this country forward. If my opponent had it her way, she'd go back to Obama and take this country backwards.
Thank you, Senator. Denise.
All right, so for the final portion of the debate tonight, each of you have 1 minute to make your closing statement. And Senator Heller, you may close first.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm a husband, a father, and a grandfather, and my wife and I have been married for 33 years. I said that, the president and I don't always get along, I don't agree with everything he does. I don't agree with everything the governor does, and I tell people I don't even agree with everything my wife does. The difference is my wife is always right. That is the difference. And that's why we've been happily married for 33 years. That's why we have 4 wonderful children and 3 wonderful grandchildren, including that little 2-year-old girl from China. Remember, under the Obama administration, the biggest fear that we had is that the hopes and the desires of our children would not be as good as ours. Is that their future wouldn't be as good as our future? We worried about that for 10 years under President Obama. That has all changed. That my children, your children, my grandchildren, your grandchildren now have a future. Now have a future because of this administration and the work we're doing in this Congress. I need your help, your support. I want to continue this work, and that's why I'm asking for your vote, your support, to go back to the United States Senate.
Congresswoman, you have your 1 moment now for closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Channel 8, Univision. I want to thank Senator Heller for a great debate tonight. Thank you. And I want to tell you, a career politician oftentimes loses touch with the people that they're supposed to represent. And as your next United States Senator, I promise to continue to take your stories, to listen to them, and take them with me to Washington and let them inform the legislation I need to do going forward. I'm proud of the bipartisan record that I've had so far, and I'm proud to continue to work on that. I also want to tell you that as an elected official, it's not just a job. It is an honor, a privilege, and a responsibility. And it's not a responsibility I take lightly. So what I hope to do, like I said, is continue to listen to your stories, to really hear you. I promise to fight for Nevada, put you first each and every day. And I promise to make you proud. I hope that I've earned your vote tonight, and I thank you for watching with all of us.
Well, we want to thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Congresswoman, thank you for your time tonight, for being in the only Nevada Senate debate. We appreciate it. Now, don't forget, the early voting begins statewide on October 20th.